Hey, welcome to Just Press Record Sessions. My name is Billy. You can call me the brand. You can't call me the brand show anymore. You can call me the director of donut efficiency. Yes, I like donuts. You obviously know that. Welcome to a new project here from us at Plastic Wax and Donuts called Just Press Record Sessions. This is an episode where you're just going to hear me talking to somebody I know, or maybe it's Arif talking to somebody he knows. Just people that maybe we've podcasted with in the past or we've interviewed. Just something fun. No script, no nothing. Literally, if you looked at my second screen, which is right here, or my Mac right behind me, literally there is nothing on that for me to talk about. Okay, maybe I have IMDb open, but that's another story. You got to have IMDb open when you have this guy on. Now, for those of you who've been with us for a long period of time, you know this name. You love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you know the name Kevin Munroe. Whether it be controversial, whether it be something you're excited about, this is the man who brought you the 2007 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. And for me personally, I kind of like it. Now, tonight, we're not going to talk a whole ton about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We probably will at some point, but tonight, free-flowing conversation. There's probably going to be a lot of talk about Walker, Texas Ranger, though. So without any further ado, let's bring in the guy I always call when I need an episode one. He is literally a two-time episode one, Mr. Kevin Munroe.
Hey, how are you, man?
Good to see you.
It is really good to see you again. It feels like it's just been forever.
You know, it always seems like we're supposed to be in the same place. Like last time I was in LA, you weren't in LA, you were off directing in Canada.
Yeah.
It could be anywhere in the universe and we just missed each other. Literally, I remember this time last year I had come to LA and you were just off to Canada the day I got there.
Yeah.
I landed and you left. So
yeah.
It's been a while. Last time we did this was Brand Show. When Brand Show was a thing, and
yeah, it was
fun.
pretty, and it was really, I sort of like, I think I based the timeline on wherever we would have been, like in treatment or where I was at the time, and I remember it being much not raw, but at the time it was very much. I remember just feeling very like, oh my god, this is too much, almost in a weird way.
Yeah,
now it's just it's
I think this is even
it's a
funnier.
much better feeling now.
For those of you watching, we share a mutual diagnosis, and I'm sure that'll come up at some point throughout this episode. But hey, two guys talking about their butts, it'll be very funny. But it's been a while, and I remember like you said, the last time we did this, it was literally coming right out of chemo. What have you been up to? You've been doing a lot.
Yeah, it was mostly just getting back to, because I mean, probably by the time that all of that was kind of done and I was back sort of trying to work again. Because I was also, remember, because that was happening, same with you. I think it was during the pandemic as well, right?
Yeah.
So it was like everything was just, it was just a cocktail of just horribleness. and so it was
Yeah, we haven't moved far from that cocktail, but you know, it's
no,
a different recipe this time.
Exactly, just different stories. But yeah, no, and so it was a lot of just trying to get back into everything and trying to see what else was out there, which again, hasn't really changed much. But for the most part, I just finished. It's a non-story because I can't really talk about it, but I just finished 2 years on a movie that we produced up in Canada at this studio called Squeeze Studio, and they're amazing. The character animation that they do is just out of this world. And and so we just finished that, and we're right in the middle right now doing that thing where you have a finished movie and you're trying to look for someone to distribute it, and it's a crazy time. So that's where we are.
Now I know more than I should let on to, but there's somebody really popular from the 90s in this movie, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct?
90s. Yeah, there's a few. Yeah, from the 90s.
Certain Al Simmons, if I may. Todd McFarlane, Spawn. I'm not going to say his name out loud. I'll let you do that. But, you know.
No, no, got it. That was a different project. I know.
Can you talk about that project at least? Because I feel like that's the last time we had a chance to catch up, besides a text here and a text there.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, no, that was forever. That was, what's his, it was a studio that it was basically, I spent for most of lockdown. I started working with this Indigenous production company based out of Canada, and we were just doing all types of just story development, and we did like a Sopranos type series that we were trying to get sold. And one of these other ones that we did just ended up kind of crossing the plate of this guy's company in Connecticut. And so just it's dude, it's such a screwy business because it's like I want to figure out a way like how can people tell these stories, right? Like it'd be really kind of cool because like it's everybody knows the stories, and it seems like when something actually gets made, like it's like, oh yeah, that's the making of. But there's like a millionfold more stories of things that just never pop. Just like that's just, and you're like, it's such a non-story, but that's kind of the cool story about it, right? Like you're like,
Yeah.
hey, we almost talked about it, and then you're like, that's it. But the idea of that, I don't know, keeps you
I
going,
mean,
I guess.
if you think about the last few years, and since you mentioned The Sopranos, there's been a resurgence of crime dramas. I don't know what you're watching right now. I know we were talking about this, how you just did a deep dive back through Walker, Texas Ranger. I'm doing a deep dive on Fallout 4, where
Nice.
you're here, I'm here, and now I'm watching the show again. But I said this the other day because if you watch Tulsa King,
Yes. Yep.
if you want to talk about an unlikely show with an incredible cast that probably you never thought would have got made because of the environment, like, pardon my French, but who the fuck wants to actually do a show in Tulsa, Oklahoma? It seems like just such a barren wasteland of cows and fields. And
And it's kind of cool though, because I mean, like, it's totally in the DNA of the show. So you're like, that's
oh
kind
yeah,
of, like it's I love now, especially just like the just so many of those things just open up where you what was the are you a Severance guy at all? Do you
I need to sit down and watch it. Everybody I work with talks about it
got it. Yeah, yeah.
consistently. One of
There
the
was yeah.
Yeah, one of my respiratory therapist coworkers, Chelsea.
Okay.
I'll probably end up having to show her this clip now. She made a comment to me where she said, "Why haven't you watched Severance?" And she just sat there for like a minute, like made me think it over. I don't know. I'm one of those people, like I tend to get to shows late. Good example. I just went back and ran the gauntlet on Daredevil. Love
Yeah,
Daredevil, like
I get that. I'm saying
clearly, and I never finished the Netflix show. And I you know how memory is, especially post chemo. You are walking around in Silent Hill or Fog Harbor or Far Harbor, one way or another. You are literally seeing gray as far as the miles can go.
yeah.
And I said to myself, as Born Again started, I watched the first episode of Born Again. And for those of you who decided not to watch Born Again yet, and you're watching this, I'm going to give you 3 seconds before I drop a spoiler. After seeing Poindexter get thrown off the roof, I was like, you know what? I really need to go back and figure out how did Bullseye get involved, and then seeing
Yeah.
Bullseye, come out of the FBI. Great origin story for him too. Poindexter coming out of the FBI, becoming Kingpin's hitman, and then deciding to be Bullseye, shattering his back, very very much like in the comic books, and then becoming, getting the surgery and then becoming Bullseye. God, what a character, and what a transformation that was. But I had to go back and watch it again, and I I ripped out all 3 seasons in about a week. How I did it, I don't know. In between working and
Yeah.
trying to sleep, I think I'm at that level of burnout right now that, if I don't sleep, I'm okay. I'm just kind of coasting. I'm like,
That's I find it's really easy to go a long time without jumping into something because I kind of feel like it's almost like trying to go into double dutch jumping, like, and you're kind of like, the timing's got to be right, and then I'm gonna jump in, and then I'm gonna watch The Wire, right? Like whatever that
yeah,
is. And in my head, I'll get caught up, and then 5 years will go by, and I won't see anything. And so there's a couple of things, yeah, that like just it's been fun to kind of just finally go, like, you know what, I never really saw that through, or
yeah.
never, so it's there's a plethora of it.
And another show, and we'll roll into some things here in a minute. Another show like that for me was The Office and Ballers. Ironically enough,
Yeah.
I'm still
Yeah.
waiting here for The Rock to just tweet out one day, we're doing season 6 of of Ballers, and I still own the Chiefs. And I'm just Spencer Strasmore was just such an interesting character, and I never watched Entourage. I could care less about anything and everything Mark Wahlberg does. Like, his entire Instagram presence is I wake up at 4 a.m., I spike a baby, I pray to God, I spike another baby, I drink another protein shake. And I'm just like, this is not entertaining to me. This is not what I want to see in my feed. But for some reason, Dwayne Johnson is just so magnetic and interesting. And seeing him just play a former football player who ends up being a
Yeah.
a stockbroker, not even a stockbroker, a retirement specialist. What a random story. And then how he doesn't get his license because he had some bad business dealings with someone. And I forget the player that it happened with. I think it was Steve McNair. I'm a football fan. I should know this. And I mean, deep down in my red and gold heart, I'm still hurting from February, seeing my Chiefs get walloped. Ugh. For those of you in the comments who know this, you feel free to roast me at this point. It's fine. But it's one of those shows that's very unlikely, and it leads to unlikely things and what we watch. And speaking of unlikely, man, you've had some seriousness of unlikely in your career. You've been everywhere. Let's talk about that a little bit. I don't want to sit here and talk shows the entire time without mentioning some of the serious contributions you had to entertainment, including everybody's favorite 90s cartoon, Hey Arnold.
Yeah, no, totally. That was Hey Arnold was actually it was my first gig in LA, and I totally just talked my way into just getting a portfolio review, and I only worked on it maybe for three to five episodes, maybe at the most, and it was all just freelance. Again, like it's one of those, like everything's just made up of like just these like unremarkable little stories, but they were cool at the time.
Well,
But yeah,
that's why we're here, though. Unremarkable stories have created this wild career that has brought you to some places and some, controversy within probably one of the most toxic fandoms in all of fandom. Besides Star Wars. Let's face it, Star Wars is like walking into
yeah.
the Tromaville dump. But we can
I
talk
think
about all that.
the further away you get from that whole "ain't it cool" kind of pinnacle moment where like everything was just like hyper, like right, like there's a I think the more distance you get from it, you realize like just how much of this it's like sort of that latent male aggression and society, that sort of like that late 90s early 2000s kind of thing, but going through that in the same way. There's some version of it, right? It was, yeah, it's a minefield looking back on it.
Well, that minefield is something, and we'll get to it. But I mean, I know I said I don't really want to talk too much about career, but obviously there's got to be some interesting stories in there. And
Sure.
I know when we did Brand Show, we didn't really get to go deep. It was more
Yeah.
like an interview, and the side stories are what we're here for. It's sessions for a reason. There's got to be something in there that we're missing that we're just gonna pull out tonight.
Right.
And speaking of that late 90s and early 2000s team, guys, I have a great urologist. Testosterone replacement therapy is actually pretty affordable. I would highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. Get over that aggression, get over that anger, do something for you, and she'll like it too, I swear. All right, enough of that. Jokes aside, and talking your way into a portfolio review with one of
Yeah.
what was at the time probably the biggest studio. Like, let's set the stage here. 1996, Batman is in its new adventure in its new adventures era. We're getting
Yeah.
The Dark Knight Returns in a cartoon with Kevin Conroy playing Batman, may I add, which was incredible. Seeing Frank
Yeah,
Miller's
that's pretty
greatest
great.
work on television. Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy are running Nicktoons, and we have a new show coming along with a kid that's shaped like a football.
Yeah, right.
Set the stage for this. LA 1996. This has got to be something.
Right. Don Henley plays on the radio. It was
Man, good reference.
1995. And it was it was I had gone there in the summer, late summer, and basically it was I'm trying to think here. Just let me just get so
Do all your
basically
thinking.
I was basically there for about a week. That's what I was scheduled for. And so I knew I basically had to figure out how to get a job. And so because I basically had only done a year at Sheridan College up to that point. It was a 3-year degree. And so I spent the summer basically doing all of the exercises in second and third year just to fatten up my portfolio. And then I went down to LA and I started trying to get into all these places. I was just getting rejected everywhere. And then I went to Nickelodeon and just basically hung out the lobby and said I had an appointment, even though my name wasn't there. And I was just like, hey, listen, I'm flying back to Canada in a couple of days. And so if anybody can see, I'll hang out. And so I just hung out. And then Craig Bartlett came out, the guy who created Hey Arnold. And he took a look at my portfolio and it was like, And I mean, like, it's looking back, there was nothing great about it at all. Like there was no, but it showed a lot of probably versatility, probably because I crammed in 3 years of animation school into the summer, and that was basically everything from prop design to storyboards to like everything. And so that was it. And then they hired me on to do prop design, and then a little bit of storyboard, a lot of layout, background stuff, like drawing all those bricks in the buildings and stuff like that. It was a very unremarkable job, but it was very cool at the same time because it was there. And Nickelodeon, it was right before they built the big studio that everybody knows, like with all the cartoon characters outside, all the statues and stuff that you see on the on.
It's near City Walk, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
sort of like it's but that's not when we were there for Harold, there was just this it was just this little annex building, and it was basically it just could have been like an insurance company building, right? And it was like Hey Arnold was on the bottom floor, and then upstairs was Angry Beavers was being done upstairs. And again, it was such a not Nickelodeon building. It was just very unremarkable. It's kind of like not to drop on the turtles thing, but I always thought about that when you'd go and see Mirage offices
Oh
in
my God, it's the most
Northampton.
unremarkable
And it's
brick
just
building
like it's a
ever.
$6 billion franchise, and they have like 3 card tables pushed together, and there's just like merchandise piled in the back, like they're selling it out the back. And it was great. And it's more badass than when you go to Playmates and in Hong Kong, and they've got the golden turtle as soon as you walk into these
Yeah,
opulent offices that
the 5th anniversary turtle, right? That's what it was. It was Leonardo, right?
I think it's what the one that's in the main office is like, I think 4 or 5 feet tall or something like that
That
in the lab, but
we
yeah.
we need to plan a trip to Hong Kong for a heist
It's
before these tariffs kick in. Then, for crying out loud, because
exactly.
I mean, I got a little bit of room right next to Val Kilmer's Batmobile, rest in peace, over there, and
Oh, yeah.
we can put something in there.
That's a
But
good Batmobile.
it's my favorite besides the animated series. But I'll get to that in a minute because there's some interesting things about storyboard and design that I don't think people know. So storyboard and design, or even just prop design for that matter, let's dive into this for a second here, because I don't think people realize how important setting the stage is here when you're talking about a show like this. You could be doing something as simple as, and where was Hey Arnold? It was New York City, right? It was supposed to be
Yeah,
the city.
yeah, yeah. So like
Okay.
Hell's Kitchen-y kind of area.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
Hell's Kitchen
did
adjacent.
when you're working on something like this, let's talk about this, and then I'm just going to throw something in front of you, and we'll go from there and just discuss
Yeah,
this. So you're designing probably one of the most iconic cartoons of the late 90s, a cartoon that many late millennials, early Gen Z really they thrive within.
mhm,
Thrive isn't even the word. I'm losing words right now, and this should be normal because I don't know, what the word I'm looking for is. You're designing something,
yeah,
but you're designing the look and feel of Hell's Kitchen. Where are you pulling from? What are you looking at? What are you taking
yeah.
inspiration from? That's what I'm trying to say.
There you go. Yeah. Well, yeah, especially for that. I mean, I was like the lowest entry possible. So I was basically there's an art pack. And so they probably just go through and it's like anything Turtles was a great example. Was that it's same as Turtles, my Turtles was based pretty much in the same area that Hey Arnold was. I just realized, but yeah, but just with like the water towers, and you're talking about like the sort of
Very old.
the stair fronts and stuff like that in front of all the brownstones and stuff. And so yeah, you just kind of start with I personally like to start with just evocative images and vibes, and just kind of like what do you like feeling wise, and then from there you start pulling sort of the specifics, realizing like, oh, that's more brownstony, or that's more sunset colors, or whatever it is. And then you start to kind of refine, well, if that's what it is, then what does a car look like in this world, or what does a building look like in this world? So but I know
So
him. I think specifically with Hey Arnold, I think it was pretty Peanuts kind of Charles Schultz influence, very much, not only in the voices, but I think at the same
oh yeah.
time that sort of that level of just detail and stuff like that.
I always found that Arnold really felt like Charlie Brown, like in his character design and in who he was, but a very different setting. To this day, I'll be 43 in June, and I don't think I even know where Charlie Brown was ever supposed to be from, except for small town USA. So
Yeah.
let's dive into that. You're tasked to design an updated Charlie Brown, which clearly we've never seen. Even if you look at Apple's new
Yeah.
Charlie Brown stuff, it's very similar. We have barns and so forth like that, where Snoopy's found in a barn and everybody gets,
Yeah.
teary-eyed and emotional. So actually, no, no, that's too easy. Let's go one step further. You're tasked. Have you seen Cape Crusader yet? The new Batman animated
No.
series that they did. My goodness. If you don't have Amazon Prime, you need to just get in my DMs and I will give you my login and you need to watch it. Or
No,
heck, I have it on my
it's
Plex
in my
server.
list.
It's
It's in my list.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
But you're tasked to create a Batman series that takes place in let's just say, let's give him the 40s. Let's give him around his first
Yeah.
appearance. Like 13, 14 years into his now 85-year run.
Yeah.
You're designing something new. You're tasked with redesigning Gotham City. You want to do something that's very deco. I mean, deco has obviously been a humongous piece of Batman for years. Very, very, very 20s, very post depression. Where are you starting? Who are you looking to for your your vibe? Who are you looking to for your imagery? What are you looking at? What are you thinking?
Yeah.
Are you going back and reading old comics? And I mean, we both know
Yeah.
we both go back and read old comics, but
Yeah.
where's your starting point? What are you doing? What's your thought process?
I don't know. Let's see.
I know I stumped you, right?
No, yeah, it's weird. I'm trying to think, honestly, I'm trying to think of how to say it without sounding like a complete pretentious douche.
Oh,
I'm
come on. We all
it's
know you're not
it's
pretentious.
thank you.
Come on.
And no, it's kind of like I think what I've learned, it even started with even Turtles was I was still in sort of in this when you're doing like an action movie, you start looking at all the other action movies and go like, what kind of action movie do I want to make, right? And then it's really easy when you're doing a comic book thing to look at a whole bunch of other comic books and go like, what kind of comic book do I want to make? And I'm realizing, at least for me, as I'm going through, that it feels more like I try to look outside for those sort of initial inspirations, right? And then sometimes it can be a feeling, sometimes it can be, I don't know, not a meme. I don't know. There's no example of that. But
There's
you kind
very
of
much
like you're
examples of that.
looking for a North Star. What was that?
There's very much examples of memes in popular culture these days.
Yeah, well, exactly, right, and there's yeah, exactly, and there's a feeling which I find is fascinating because there's a tone that you get in that kind of media that you just can't get in other that just aren't inherent to like, movies or series and stuff. So it's cool. But yeah, so that's kind of where I would start with that, like because I think and especially with Batman, I guess, and then to kind of figure out kind of what's a different vibe you want to take to it, right? And to me, it's as soon as you can find that North Star, then you sort of start building out from it from there. And then you start looking at all the references and what's been done and how you can do it better and then creating different stuff totally on your own, I think.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So what would be your North Star
Semi-pretentious.
then for Batman? I mean, I have an idea of where I'd go if it was me in your shoes.
What would you do?
So I would look outside of New York City, which is what if you look
Yeah.
at Batman,
Mhm.
everything Gotham City is always meant to have been um, New York. But then you look
Yeah.
at the way that Zack Snyder did it with Bloodhaven. You look at the way
Yeah.
he did it with Metropolis and Gotham all right next to each other. I would have gone for more of a vibe of old Chicago. And I mean that's always what I felt with, and you can obviously see Millennium Park in Justice League. You can see certain things about the
Yeah.
Superman monument that really mirror Grant Park in Chicago and so forth like that.
Yeah.
I'd go for a
Talking about
more
like Untouchables, kind of
yeah.
like Roaring
Yeah,
to it, like that kind of like Batman set in a Brian De Palma kind of 1920s. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
very, very
totally makes
dungy, very, very dirty, very gross. Gotham City is a city that and I feel like we've seen it a few times. It has fallen from prominence and has been saved. And I mean, then you have the view of the 90s where Val Kilmer and George Clooney. I don't care what anybody says. I love Batman and Robin. I love Batman Forever. I love bad movies. We've we've talked about this to no length. Like we talked about Delta Force the other day, and we're gonna circle back to Delta Force here in a second.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be a good one. So for
Yeah.
those of you watching this, I got a very incredible, and I'll dive into this really fast and we'll get back to it. But I got a very funny picture from Kevin the other day, and we were talking about Chuck Norris, and he sent me this. So this is Kevin's Delta Force collection. So hence why we have to actually talk about this, because physical media is another great topic, especially when you're talking to somebody who works in an industry like this, and why it's so important to preserve media. But yeah, I would go with that old kind of Chicago, the Untouchables, Brian De Palma look. You're kind of speaking to my brain. I want it to be that city that fell from prominence. Like you saw what Todd McFarlane did with Spawn.
Yeah.
The alleyways of New York City. You never really saw direct New York City. You never saw Times Square. You never saw an actual borough.
Mhm.
You didn't know where Spawn was in the early days. You just knew
Yeah.
he came back from hell. He was a
In the
Marine, and
underbelly someplace. Yeah.
he was in the underbelly of New York. I mean, you can't really do that with Batman, because Batman needs places that he needs to save. Like, oh,
He's got
Gotham
to
Bank is
interact.
being robbed.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
got to
he
interact
has
with
to
the world so
interact.
much.
But I mean, we've seen the deco and the grandiose looks before. Obviously, the
Yeah.
90s, everything was grandiose. But one story that did it really well, and I would kind of lean into that too, was Nightfall, and how Nightfall really didn't take place in a direct location. Like you saw, like the first time you saw Bane was in a back alley,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
and he
yeah,
just rocked somebody and then put him through a wall.
yeah.
If my memory serves me correctly, I should probably run upstairs and grab the book, but something like that. And you lean into it further, and to go back to Daredevil here, with the only main location you really see in Hell's Kitchen is ever Josie's,
Yeah.
the bar. So, maybe one main location that takes place when it's Bruce,
Yeah.
maybe like an affluent club or something like that, but
Yeah.
no generalized locations, no names, kind of more grungy, short streets. And the Dark Knight did that too. When Bale came in as Batman, Chicago
Yep.
was the centerpiece for Gotham City. The main strip
Yeah.
of North Park and Millennium Park is right there.
Yeah.
And the trains overhead and everything, that kind of look, that old industrial city look. That's what I always saw for Gotham City. And I never ever thought in my view, as I get
Mhm.
older and I get deeper into it and I look back at what I loved as a kid was there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it happens. But so we've now designed the city, but let's go one step even further with this, because it's already rolling. Are you going to give Batman a new suit? Are you going to keep him in a tactical armored suit? Are you going to put him back in spandex? Is he blue and gray? Is he black and gray? Is he all black? See,
What do you
these are
think
the
of the patents?
conversations.
What do you think about the patents and stuff?
Honestly, I fucking love it.
It's like it's
I
I need to watch it again, but there was something really kind of cool about it. I dug it.
Did you ever see the concept suit for
No,
Pattinson? I
no.
have it.
I'll look
I,
that up.
it's no, it's literally, I have it right here.
Oh,
I'm
really?
not gonna. I'll show you off camera, but in the original suit, when Mezco got their view of it,
Yeah.
there was orange in the boots.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and he kind of had that cross with the tactical look, but personally for me, I'm still very, very partial to the Frank Miller look. So I'm going to keep him in that
Yeah.
Frank Miller style look. Maybe a bit of armor around the chest, like
Yeah.
pronounce the bat logo a little bit. But that 55-year-old Batman, and I posted something. So we're filming on April 9th, guys. I posted something on my Instagram earlier today. I finally obtained my Bat Holy Grail, and that is the 2014 PX Previews New York Comic Con exclusive Dark Knight Returns Batman. And I've always been very partial to that, because that was my first Batman comic, just like Born Again was my first Daredevil story. So I'm I mean, I'm also really just a homer for Frank Miller. So, I'm gonna lean into that older Batman look. I'm gonna lean into that Frank Miller style. Maybe even the across with the Affleck look, because it wasn't
Mhm.
all too frilly, but it was awesome.
Yeah. No, it was. I personally, and this is not a hot take at all. I would just totally go Dark Knight Returns, and that to me is I would like that would be the only Batman movie that I would personally love to do. There's something that's really really cool about just a old ass Batman and just what's in that dude's head and what like it's just an interesting character model. I just like the Clint Eastwood version of what Bruce Wayne is. That to me is fantastic, and I love that book.
The
It's like one of my
anxiety,
favorites.
the it's the greatest Bat story. And listen, people are gonna fight in the comments over this, but it is the greatest Batman story of all time. Like, listen, Hush was
Yeah.
great, Long Halloween was great, R.I.P. was great, Nightfall was great. All of like Azrael, we got Azrael thanks to Nightfall, and there's stories I can sit here and tell. But if you look at the left hand side of this case, middle shelf, you can see it's all Dark Knight Returns,
Yeah.
and
I,
there's
I
just
total badass.
yeah, for those of us early
Yeah.
millennial, late Gen Xers, that was our guy. And you know, I mean, that was our entry point. Bruce Wayne with a mustache in retirement, drinking, driving a race car.
Yeah.
It was just so badass. And
When
and
we
and
yeah.
such a great story time too. 80, you know what? Now that we said that, we've kind of built out a semi small universe here. I would use that timeline too. With the iconic green poles in Crime Alley. I actually, ironically enough, I have one of those poles. Todd McFarlane made them. It's literally right behind me. I would go for that imagery, that grunge imagery, and the dark streetlights and everything like that. It
Yeah.
just it fits. I mean, obviously, this is a far cry from Hey Arnold and directing Ratchet and Clank and a favorite from last show talking about Dylan Dog. I
Yeah.
mean, but
Yeah.
Batman is a staple. Batman is a staple, and this is not an interview show. This is more of a deep dive. The idea here is to sit down for at least an hour and talk about everything in between. Now, guys, I could talk to you about Donner and Freaky Flyers. I could talk to you about Dylan Dog. We can talk about TMNT 07. I'm sure that comes up in every interview you do. What happened with TMNT 07? And we don't do that here. We like TMNT 07, as you know, but
Yeah. There was a speaking of Batman, it was twice we almost got you talk about like close misses and just things that just never pop, but like are cool enough to at least say that you tried to get it done. Twice trying to get Kingdom Come made, and I like that to me is like one of like the greatest
oh, it's right up there.
superhero stories ever. And so it was twice that we almost had it and it fell apart each time. This was right before I think Batman Begins came out, and then as soon as that happened, then everything was, the whole world of comic movies just completely changed. And so yeah, but for a hot minute there, like twice, we almost got it made, and dude, it just that to me, and that version of Bruce Wayne to me, the sort of Gregory Peck Bruce Wayne is so cool.
Yeah.
It's just fun, just fun.
My favorite Superman is honestly Kingdom Come too. What a old man Clark. Him and Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns again. That just standing there, chest in the wind, with his shirt unbuttoned down here, and he's all like, with the dog standing behind him, like that. That's Clark Kent to me. Like with the glasses on, pretending like he's got, and then he's got the fucking Jerry curl. That was just,
Yeah,
it was peak Superman, and I always loved it. But
yeah.
Kingdom Come, really, talk about this. Yeah, I've never heard this story.
Yeah, no, and there's nothing more than that. It was like twice. The first time was at there was somebody. This happens a lot where people have like some sort of, not tech, that sounds like a bad movie, but they usually have software, some sort of animation software or some sort of process, and then they're trying to pair it together with a concept, right? So one of these ones, there was I think that one, the first one, it was basically a mocap technology, but it would have been back around Polar Express kind of times, I'd say. So that probably would have been, you can
99,
imagine the
2000.
the height of how great it would have been. And then the other time was directly with Warner Brothers, and that was right after Ninja Turtles were coming out, and we pitched Kingdom Come, and we also pitched Plastic Man, which was another story that I
Plastic
would love
Man's
to tell.
great.
I
I
would
would I would love to see him be more than he is. And for those of you who don't know Kingdom Come, this is a story that came out under the Elseworlds titles of DC in the I think this was the late 90s, early 2000s,
Mhm.
early 2000s, 96 to be exact. Was it? Wait, hold on. 96, but this is a storyline where superheroes are in an alternate universe, have lost their moral compass, and are just trying to find their way. And it's Mark Waid and Alex Ross. Like, how do you get any more iconic?
I know.
I mean, not knowing really much about Mark Waid at the time, but knowing who Alex Ross was,
Yeah.
and everybody, no matter what it is, whether you have a variant in Marvel Snap or you have a print that you bought at New York Comic Con, you
Yeah.
know who Alex Ross is because he has painted some of the greatest covers of all time.
We had him on board for the when we were doing right after Ninja Turtles when I was doing Gotcha Man. I developed Gotcha Man, which was Battle of the Planets as well, back in the 70s. And so then, have you ever seen any of Alex's paintings of Battle of the Planets?
I haven't, but
You
also
got to say it's
G-Force,
just
for those of you who
amazing.
know it as
And
G-Force.
G-Force, yes,
Oh, I love
G-Force as
Battle
well.
of the Planets.
But the Alex's look for that was fantastic, and so we were actually, while we were developing the new take on it, we were going to try to get him to do some painting, but it fell apart somehow. I'm not sure why.
So how did that even come about? I mean, Alex Ross and Gotcha Man sounds like an incredible combination. Honestly,
Yeah,
I have not seen, and I think my favorite Alex Ross piece. Have you ever seen the one of Ultron he did, where it looks like he
yeah,
shines, and on the white when they did the
yeah,
just the white back variant covers that it's
yeah,
Avengers something. It's
yeah,
quite possibly my favorite out besides the first cover of Kingdom Come with Old Man Superman. It's
yeah.
to the walls one of the best things I've ever seen. And Alex Ross is just he's one of those
He-
guys that
He's
I
amazing.
I'd really like to sit down and have a conversation with and be like, so discuss. No other words, just discuss him.
Yeah,
I'd love to sit down with Jack Kirby. Obviously, can't do that now.
yeah.
Jack Kirby and Stan Lee are gone, but a guy like him, and to really hone in on this conversation in general for a second here, guys, go after meeting the people that have made shit that you like, the people you admire. You never know who you're
It's
going to
true.
run in. You never know who you're going to
Yeah,
run into in a support group or through a charity you work with. or something along those lines where someone's story is going to be
that's right.
shared, and you
Yeah.
have a parallel. So if
There's
I could
something
give
about
you,
it. I
yeah,
agree.
just go after it, man. We met Nick Castle back in October, and I've been actively
Nice.
working with Nick Castle's agent to get him on here so I can be like, so you fed Michael Myers a Dr. Pepper.
That's funny.
And to
That's
have
funny.
those conversations and you know to live that moment would be great. But dude, Alex Ross
Yeah.
and Gotcha Man just sounds like such a great combination. And
Yeah, it was gonna be really great. There was like that movie had like a ton of roller coaster stuff where it was just like it started out. I was writing on it for a bit. Well, I wrote the first draft of it. I was directing it. Then they wanted some fresh blood. Uh I have a habit of overtaking stuff. And so I
you
think it was
know,
so to inject it, I think they wanted to, but so I was like, that was one of the first times where I was like, instead of fighting back, I want to go like, well, screw it. I want to just work with people that I want to work with. And then and so I just said, I really would love it if we could work with Paul Dini because I thought Paul's writing was genius. And so then Paul came on board and we were writing the script together. Nicest guy on the face of the planet. And we just had a really great time developing this awesome take on it. And then more studio politics intervened and people wanted to have, uh, they wanted to have another take on it. And then we brought in more screenwriters. And then we came really close to, no, I'm not going to say that. I can't remember his name. But then we eventually landed on Robert Mark Kamen, who he was one of Luc Besson's writing partners, and he co-wrote like The Professional and Taken, and God, I think he had some writing credit on Fifth Element as well. Um, and he wrote the Karate Kid. That was Robert's big thing. So that was sort of the studio's thing. It's like, hey, we'll get this guy to come in who's done this big franchise, Karate Kid, and he came in and he was just like an old school Hollywood writer. It was fantastic. Yeah, it's just crazy, and you just kind of end up, like, bouncing through, and the amount of people that you end up meeting who have touched, like, cool things and stuff that, that you've been influenced by is
Now, this
I
was the
love it.
2013 Gotcha Man, right?
No, it never got made. It never got made.
Well, because
There's
I remember they
yeah.
did one in 2013 and it sucked.
I think it was,
It
yeah, there's
was
a
awful.
Japanese one, I wanna say, I can't remember what it
Yeah.
was, and so
I
yeah, no, but we had it, and it came so and I mean, Warner
Toya
Brothers
Sato did it.
bought it in the room, we pitched it, it was a 5-minute pitch, they bought it, it was gonna be PG-13, and that's how they bought it, so that was way back then, that was gonna be a big deal, and then everybody then wanted the Power Rangers. I think that was sort of the big creative divide,
So,
but it
I'm
worked.
glad you said that because I was gonna move into that direction because if you look at Gotcha Man and Battle of the Worlds, G-Force, whatever you know
Mhm.
it as, whatever iteration you saw it as, I mean, it inspired so much. Like you have stuff that literally was a direct spin-off of it, like the Macross and Macross sagas of Robotech. Robotech was very similar in so many ways. And then you look at Voltron,
Yep.
Defenders of the Universe, you look at Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, you look at all these things that it actually gave us,
Yeah.
and you think about it and you're just like, man. So it's funny you say that because you're leading me into a question here because
Mhm.
I grew up a huge Power Ranger fan.
Yeah.
I have Tommy's power coin on this arm somewhere. Where is it?
Nice.
It's right there, and I'm very nostalgic about it. And we talked about toxicity and fan bases earlier, and we can
Mm.
dive into this here for a second because toxicity in the Power Ranger community is unreal. Um, what are your thoughts on that when someone tries to reinvent the wheel? The wheel does not need to be reinvented. I think this has been a hot button. This has been a massive hot button with people. I don't know if you've seen the new Snow White yet, but I I don't want to sound like I'm dumping on something for the sake of dumping on something. I just did not like it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel the magic in the new Snow White. That's really what it was for me. And
Yeah.
clearly I'm one of those people. I'll give something a chance if it's worth giving a chance. And
Yep.
I love the original Snow White when I was a kid. My wife enjoyed
It's
the new Little
tricky.
Mermaid, but
Yeah.
I find it really tricky when you try to update
Yeah.
a classic. So let's dive into this here. First of all, real quick, where did it go wrong with Gotcha Man? Why wasn't it made? Was it just they just couldn't get the right story? Was it the simple fact that you had the right formula with Paul Dini and it didn't happen? I mean,
Uh,
and we're gonna have to dive into Ninja
yeah.
Turtles now that I said this because this really discusses the
Yeah.
topic here. But again, it's one of those things. Was the formula just not there?
It was formula was very much there. We were on fire. We had just come off of Ninja Turtles. We just finished TMNT.
Great movie.
Company thank you. Company put aside the plans for TMNT 2 so we could focus on Gotcha Man. And that was going to be our primary thing. Gotcha Man came about because the head of the company, Francis, came to me as TMNT was kind of all coming together, and he just said and the guy was fearless, which is like that's sort of what you need to be in that position. And he was like, "What movie would you want to do?" and the first thing that came to mind is how I would just always watch Battle of the Planets like every single day, like in grade school, like after like I worship that show. And so I said it. He
How
was
can
like,
you not?
I like that show a lot too. And son of a bitch, he went away and he got the rights to it. So he got the rights and then so I wrote that. And then at that time, somewhere between when we said yes to it and then when the movie started, uh it TMNT came out and it made like $100 million. And then all of a sudden, then the studio, there's pressure from a studio, and there's a thing that happens when I think success means you should try to make it better. And so we went from this scrappy studio that was like sort of in the basement of this banking building to these really super posh offices that were really great. And the offices were amazing. They were above like a Cheesecake Factory and stuff. It was
So
fantastic.
you're able to go downstairs on lunch and get some buffalo
Oh,
wings and
dude,
that
yeah, no,
that
no,
key
yeah, no. It
lime
was
cheesecake.
we hit, then El Torito was there, and so that was like margarita, and that's it. It got so his politics got bad, like trips to the. It was just yeah. There's so many stories.
Buddy, where's my
That
lunch?
that's a whole podcast into itself, and
Oh, I'm
and
for it.
so yeah, and so what happened though is that the scrappy team that it was incredible. They we now had 5 more production managers, and we had 3 more PAs, and we had all of these people coming in mainly from bigger studios who were bringing in these processes that sort of didn't really I think sort of they weren't done the same way that the first movie was done, and I think there was a clash in approaches, and there wasn't an overall goal for how to integrate sort of what like was the ultimate of like these scrappy desert bloomer flowers, which is like give them nothing and they will create something awesome for you, to a whole bunch
No
of people
water, just
coming
sunlight,
in.
and
Yeah, you know, like and like they'll take care of it, right? Like, and then there was this other group coming in, which was like just like day 2, I'm decorating my office with like trees and all this other shit. So anyway, nothing against anybody. It's fucking, who cares? But it's yeah, and so it was, but it was, and I think the movie just kind of got caught up in the middle. The movie was just like it wasn't about the movie itself, but the movie became sort of it's like a messed up divorce or something, like when there's like one kid and the 2 parents are taking all of that stuff between them and they're putting it on the one kid and who's spending time with who. And then so yeah, no, and it's a
been
real
there.
thing, and everyone's it's and so yeah, so and I think that's kind of what happened. And then I think then at that time, and then I will, yeah, we don't have to go too therapy-ish with it, but I was at the time, I think I had much more of a kind of screw you kind of attitude towards the whole thing. And so it was, I think that was the thing that kind of expedited processes, I think, at the end of the day. And I think I would have politicked that situation much better nowadays, but at the time I just felt like I'd run out of patience for it, I think, at a time. So we got to a point where it was mutually decided that I move on. And then they tried with another couple of other directors after that. So, and it's just what happens. It's weird. It's just, and some things pop and some don't. And
I hear it a lot from Arif. Some of the things he talks about when it's us or we're off camera. He loves to talk about his time with James Avery on Sparks, and he always talks about how James Avery was and what he taught you. And guys, if you really want to go back and watch that interview with Arif, who another one of my dearest friends in Hollywood, accredited voice actor, very popular in the Transformers universe. For those of you who don't know him, also Pierce Washington in Saints Row. His stories about James Avery and what James taught people are just monumental. Like I could sit there like this. And you know, for me, my career's kind of run parallel to you guys being, you know, in media, being in podcasting, radio, etc. But man, I feel like G-Force would have done well if we got
I
an actual
still
Gotcha Man movie.
100%. Yeah. I got such a bug up my butt whenever they wanted to make it more Power Rangers, and then that was around the time that Robert came in to start writing on it, and because I really believed in the PG-13 animated
Yeah,
film
that's
back
all you
then,
needed. But
and that was 2007, so it was still right before everybody started. There was no Netflix sort of proof of concept of people wanting that,
right,
and so I was really kind of I got a little pissy about that, I think, and but then I was at Disney World with my kids that Christmas or something, and they had a Power Rangers show that came out where, like, you know, they have all their like roaming shows at all the parks and stuff like that. And so at whatever the Hollywood park was there, they had this Power Rangers show where they just scream up in this convertible and they roll out.
probably
And
at Universal, I'd
guys,
assume.
it was at Disney. It was
Really?
because yeah, no, because I know we haven't gone to we didn't go to
Oh,
the
07
Universal one.
was trying to think what Power
So,
Rangers that
but you
was.
think about it, but no, but it was the one that was on Disney Channel,
Was it Dino Thunder?
Jet. I can't remember, to be honest with you.
Because JDF came back around that time, if I remember correctly, because he came
That's
back as
fine.
the Black Dino Ranger. He was Professor Tommy Oliver. I mean, my knowledge of Power Rangers starts and ends with Super Sentai and Mighty Morphin, and maybe through Zeo. Turbo came out, and I saw my first pair of boobs, and that was it. Sorry, honey. Uh, but for me, and don't get me wrong, I look at a lot of stuff back then with rose-colored glasses, but I sent you a picture of something from my Plex server
Yeah,
actually,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I that's one of those things. Like same with Robotech, and I'm not really an anime guy. I look through back at these things with rose-colored glasses, like, and I don't think they really need to be changed. You don't need to reinvent the wheel to keep the wheel turning.
Yeah.
Great example of that. Warner Brothers and DC has been doing the animated versions of Watchmen. If you
Yeah.
have HBO Max and you haven't seen them yet, they're incredible.
Yeah. They're
But
really good.
they added some, obviously, as you know, they added some things like they added a deeper love story between Silk Spectre and Owlman. They added more to the entire story of Rorschach. They added more to Dr. Manhattan, but it doesn't pull far enough away from the source material that it bothers you. Like the story of how the original Owlman dies being added in. Imagine if that was in the original movie. That and don't get me wrong, Zack Snyder's Watchmen was phenomenal. But I feel like sometimes, and we've talked about this in length on camera and off camera, to
Mhm.
what was done, and we're gonna roll into this here in a second. What was done to your version of TMNT? And I know the whole story.
Mhm.
I've heard the story, and when I tell you guys the story of a warrior king coming through a portal and being immortal, it was fucking cool. And the way it came out, the animation, it was darker, it was better, and it led from a lot of what we saw in the Mirage comics. And we'll get to this again. I keep saying that that's going to be the phrase of the show. We will get to this.
Yeah.
But I feel like did they and we don't want to go too far into this, but did Warner Brothers ask too much? And we know the Weinsteins fucked a lot of stuff up. We know a lot of people in Hollywood have fucked a lot of things up.
Mhm.
We're seeing it firsthand with and this is great that we get to come back to this conversation, because we had this conversation a few years ago. Everybody was still pumped. We were just coming off of Endgame. We were still in the midst of Phase 4 with Marvel last time we got on camera together. And everybody was stoked about Love and Thunder. Love and Thunder
Yeah.
bombed. Black
Yeah.
Panther 2, you and I, our brother in arms, Chadwick Boseman, another colon cancer survivor,
Yeah.
gone. So, a full pivot to the story is he was dealing with a battle deeper than both of ours with metastasis. And having to pivot. And now we're coming back into a time where Marvel is cooking on certain stuff. And I said it last night on my Instagram, because last night, if you're watching this long after the fact, episode 8 of Born Again dropped last night. And again, spoilers, please skip this part, skip ahead about 15 seconds. Have you seen last night's episode yet?
No.
Okay, never mind. Never mind. We're not gonna go any further. Not gonna all I'm gonna say is at the end of that episode, I screamed. And
Love it.
the have you been watching Born Again? How they're running the
No.
power? Okay, so it's a
No. I haven't.
parallel story and it's
Yeah, yeah.
beautiful.
I've heard enough about that. Yeah.
Well, you're gonna have to do some homework before the next time I allow you in front of an open microphone with me again, man. You really need to watch this. Which Arif and I are getting ready to do a deep dive on the entire Daredevil series from
Nice.
Netflix and now, and
Yeah, yeah,
I need him to do the same thing. I ask him every day. I say, "Have you watched Daredevil yet?" "No, man, I'm off with the kids. I'm doing this. I'm doing that." "No, I'm working on this movie. Can't talk about it." He's very much like you. My conversations with him are very much in code at times, and again, another show that's not reinventing the wheel, but I feel like this is something that's to get back to my original point. This is something that, especially lately in Hollywood, has been trying to happen. People are trying too much to reinvent the wheel, and
yeah.
it's funny. I was watching a video about this earlier from Steve Archer. Hey Archer Live, great show
Mhm.
for those of you who watch it. Steve did a video talking about RIP Go Woke Go Broke, because he went back and revisited the controversy of X-Men 97, which quite possibly is the greatest animated series ever made, or the greatest follow-up animated series ever made.
Yeah.
My God. You've seen that at least, right?
I've seen, yeah, I have 2 episodes, but yeah, it was fantastic.
More homework for you, pal. More homework
I
for
know,
you.
dude. I know. I'm too busy making them. So.
You got to stop making movies for 5 minutes and watch television. That's the worst ask in history.
I know.
But no,
Mhm.
just absolutely grip. And X-Men has always been gripping and compelling, and has always been a story of acceptance. We know that.
Yeah.
I forget the kid's name who got fired over some stuff. God, what's his name? Bo something, the
Okay.
producer who was fired for having an OnlyFans, which was the controversy, which I think is kind of silly. If you want to have an OnlyFans, have an OnlyFans. But the wheel wasn't
Yeah.
tried to be reinvented. We took where we ended in 97 when Professor X died. And then Magneto comes into the picture and does
Yeah.
what Magneto does and just causes chaos and controversy. You know, there's but these are this and Born Again are the two best things that Marvel has done in a while. Now,
Yeah.
with that being said, do you think Hollywood is trying to reinvent the wheel too much as of late? We're in 2025 and it feels like there's no original ideas. There's too much AI and there's too much reboot.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, even just from having this film that we just finished going around, and it's a decent budgeted film. If it came from any other mainstream studio, you wouldn't even think twice about it when you saw it. And the temperature at every agency, every major studio is that everybody is just so focused on IP. Everybody is just it's like, and they want to they you know they say they want to take on other stuff and develop, but really the reality of it is that it's just the industry seems scared, and I think that they deal with that fear by trying to bet on something that seems to be dependable. But you're like, how? How? Because I mean, it's like if Minecraft would have come out and bombed, you wouldn't have been surprised. I think you'd be like, but it's you're like it's. I get it. Maybe it whiffed. It just didn't connect. Why isn't there 6 more Pokemon movies? I don't know, but it seems like I think it's like that's all it is, and out of fear, I think they're just and that's I think the thing that I think whatever theatrical is just going to become large spectacle IP display buildings, right? And the rest of it's going to be, Lord of the streaming.
I agree, and I think streaming right now has been better than the movie theaters.
That's
And it's
100%,
that's the
100%,
most
100%.
frightening thing I've ever said in my life. Like,
Yeah, I can't be pious about it because I feel the same way. And even on principle, if I'll try to go and support that, I still in my heart, I still would rather be like everybody else and just sitting on my sofa with my awesome TV and my awesome sound system and just
I don't
and
know, man.
pause it when I need to use the bathroom.
There's
Shout out
something
Colin
about
Cancer.
yeah, fuck you, cancer. We're still more to
for
come there.
for ruining movies.
Yeah,
God damn it.
cancer. Listen,
Can't watch a whole movie anymore.
let's take a detour and stop at the McDonald's off the highway here. We said it earlier in the show. We're both colon cancer survivors. If I remember correctly, you were stage 3A. I was stage 2B.
Uh, 3B, but I'm not even sure. I'm not. That's a flex, but it doesn't matter. I guess it's
No, it's
whatever.
not really a flex. It sucks if you're stage 1. It sucks if you're stage 4. It sucks
Yeah,
if you're stage 0. But
actually, it's B. Yeah.
for those of you who have
Excuse me, sir.
never had the unfortunate luck to be like us and have your ass tattooed to be lined up for radiation. Uh, Kevin and I, and I'll dive into this
Mhm.
story real quick, accidentally met because of the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. And a
Yeah,
long, heartfelt DM later, here we are all these years later. I
yeah,
remember sitting in chemo and I saw this post and I stopped on it. And it was just this skinny dude in a black shirt sitting there with his mask on, holding a chemo
that's
bag.
funny.
And I'm reading it and it says Kevin Munroe. And I'm like, there's no fucking way. This is the same guy who did Ratchet and Clank and TMNT 07. And to my surprise, it's Kevin. So
Funny.
DM later, telling him what I'm dealing with, few DMs back and forth. We did that first episode of the brand show
Yeah,
when I cleared chemo protocol and
yeah,
I told you some news. I'm not ready to share it publicly yet. I told you off camera what they told
yeah.
me a couple weeks ago, which I'm very excited about, and I will reveal
It's
that to the
fantastic.
world eventually.
Yeah,
It's man, it's unbelievable. It's the news you look forward to. You know when you obtain that first stage of remission, it's beautiful. But what you guys don't understand is that after colon cancer, you are to some extent incontinent. So going to the movies and all of a sudden your butt saying, "Hey man, you got to poop." It's not like it was. It's not you go to the bathroom, you poop. It's you're running 150 miles an hour out of the theater, praying that you don't spray and pray the lobby. And it's funny for me because I have horror stories. I could make I can make 10 Penny Tower and Fallout 3 look like a quiet day in the park. And God bless my wife, the stories she could tell you. But guys, when your doctor tells you to get a colonoscopy, or if you start shitting blood, just go get a fucking colonoscopy, will you?
It's
For
way
two
easier.
guys who've been there, it's so much easier.
It's way easier than waiting.
Okay, back onto the highway. So
Brought to
streaming is taking over, but
yeah.
the
Yeah.
real quick, is this new movie going to be in theaters, or is this going to be streaming exclusive?
So it's funny, and I mean, where we're not talking about what the movie is. I can talk about it like that. Yeah, the goal was theatrical because it's a
Good.
romantic idea, I think,
Okay.
and so and I do agree, and you know we did the sound mix and everything in Montreal, and we did the final color, and we did it on like an honest to god like 60-foot screen, and just and we did the sound in Dolby Atmos, and even though
Ooh,
you need that anyway for most streaming, but to hear it
Atmos
in
is
a room with
great.
like just 91 speakers all around you, it was just insane. And to be able to map it and say I want that scream to go from here all the way over here, just that it has to be akin to what you're dealing with the new sort of like pod sort of software and technology, and just the idea of like, holy shit, like to have that much control and have that much in your hands. Whereas before it was like sort of like you had to record it, you had to hope for the best, you had to hope how it was going to layer in with everything else. So yeah, no, so aiming for theatrical, but theatrical is really hard. And then the reality of it, if you just talk about not just looking at it from the point of view of people who pay to get movies done, right? Now you're looking at this model where it's like theatrical is kind of like a lottery ticket, because if it comes out and if it hits, it's it's more money in your pocket.
Yeah,
And at the same time, though, it costs money to put it in the theater. So you have to come now mostly with your own prints and ads budget. So you got to come in with at least 10, 15, 20 million probably to come in, just
you're
to let
going.
people know that it's out
Yeah,
there. So now you're
yeah,
already down that much more. Even if you were clever and made your movie for $2 million, you're still gotta someone's gotta for theatrical, right? And then that's what it is. But then you pay to play, or you go to Netflix, and if you're lucky, you get 10, 12, $15 million maybe for a finished movie. And you better hope that it costs less than that. But a lot of these don't. So now, like,
you can do
where
it
do
at
you
the
go in
Chinese
the
theater.
industry,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
it's fine.
Well, I mean, to get back to the point about Dolby Atmos, because you and I have spent copious amounts of money on our man caves.
Mhm.
Clearly, this is just part of it, as you know.
Yeah.
But I love sitting down and to contradict myself for a second here, and to get back to it, because I've mentioned it a few times in this episode. Playing Fallout in Atmos with the Atmos mix is just so incredible to me, because you can hear a raider coming up behind you, or a death claw, just a death
It's
claw roar, and it's coming from your right side speaker, and you're
incredible.
like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So shout out to whoever did the sound mix for Bethesda on the next gen remaster of Fallout. I've and shout out to colon cancer for making me a console gamer again. I have this beautifully built PC here that I spent a copious amount of money on, and is something that I find very, very fun to do, is build computers, and not being able to really spend time in this chair, because I spend all day sitting here working with patients, when they come in for their CPAP devices, and just wanting to get out of this chair after that. It's like I like my couch. I like my 55-inch TV, and I like my big sound system, and just grabbing my
Yeah.
PlayStation controller and sitting down and
Yeah.
hunkering down. And
Yeah.
and this leads to another side quest here, because we were talking about, you know, diving into things. I can't put Fallout down. I've been on such a deep dive with it. I've put 160 hours into it since the middle of February. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We've covered cancer. We've covered this new movie. When are we going to be able
Yeah.
to hear about this movie? Because we got to schedule the follow up when that
I
happens.
don't know. Yeah, no, I'm hoping in the next couple of months I'll probably get, because now I think it's now they're engaging conversation with streamers as well, and so it'll be what it is. It's really funny, like, because it used to. I mean, it was amazing to have the Turtles premiere and have that be at like Man's Chinese Theater, and to get out and had a green carpet and the whole deal. But then you realize, like, just the economics of it, and to deal with, and none of it has to do with story and what it's about. So to me, it's more about at least for me, probably as a safety, as a safety device to protect my own sanity. It has to be about the story. It has to be about the story that you're telling, because at the end of the day, it's still someone's going to discover it in some shitty little phone on a subway someplace, but it could end up being their favorite movie ever.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
just that's the reality of it. And so once I accept that, it's cool. And if that does that mean then that you have to aim for a certain budget in order to have it make sense for that platform? It's cool that you just have to find the stories that work for you and the ones that you want to tell. So that's
Right. And
kind of the
and back to your point about theaters, I think, the idea of a wide release on that traditional 60-foot screen is truly romantic. I mean, I wanted to mention him earlier, John Carpenter just getting his star on the Walk of Fame finally. In
yeah.
my eyes, the greatest director of all time.
And that dude
Uh,
worked, man. I mean, like when you talk about somebody who got to repeatedly deliver his
yeah.
vision on everything, like from every aspect, the idea of like how satisfied that dude must have been after the movies
Salt,
doesn't matter. Like,
Halloween, you name it, Fog, the
yep,
thing. Yeah,
yeah,
man. We can sit here and romanticize John Carpenter, and we you said it earlier, the industry is morally bankrupt. And I remember the last time we recorded, we had just gotten confirmation for Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. So that brings me back to a point here. I wanted to bring up David Gordon Green because you're
yeah.
you're talking about, the safety points. And I'm not one to shit on David Gordon Green because I thought Halloween Ends, if you had taken Halloween Ends and mixed it with Kills, and I'll go back here to setting a story here. If you had mixed in Allison and Corey's story into Kills, it would have made a lot more sense. But I think it was and I said this to James Jude Courtney when I met him. We had a great conversation. Shout out to James Jude Courtney, may I add, one of the nicest stuntmen, and one of the nicest stuntmen turned actors you're ever going to meet. 62 years old, dude is a brick shithouse too. Coolest dude in the world. I had such a wonderful conversation with him when I met him. I want to meet him again, but we talked about David's vision, and he said to me, his exact words to me where he goes, "Man, doesn't matter who likes it, who hates it. I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you enjoyed what I did, what everybody did." I mean, it's hard not to get on board knowing Andy Matichek is from Framingham too, which is 45 minutes up the road.
Yeah.
But, being a lifelong Halloween fan, uh, there was a video that Jimmy Champagne did recently that I agree with. Horror was better when it sucked. Halloween 6 is one of the best movies ever by that logic.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he said, no matter if they liked it or hated it, they're talking about it,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
by that logic, why wouldn't Hollywood want to take the risk? I mean, yeah, you want something that's safe. Like we're getting a Crystal Lake TV series.
Yeah.
Alice King is returning to Friday the 13th, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
But
But
what
you
the
know
fuck
what?
are you
Like, you know what's
saving,
even
man?
safer though, when you look at like Zaslav or whoever the guy is in charge of Discovery, Warner Brothers Discovery. What's safer is dumping $40 million into like 20 new HGTV shows.
Oh God.
And they probably make more money off of those than they do off of any of this stuff. So just like and I don't say it to be like a bummer about it, and I hate because like it doesn't get me down, but it's just to acknowledge that that's the reality of it. Somehow just helps me just sleep a little bit better, just to because that's what it is, and so you got to try to find your lane and your happiness within that, because that's all that is to them. He would
Yeah.
rather be making more like 90-day fiance shows because
Oh God. Ugh.
it's super cheap to make and the return has to be great in terms
Yeah.
of ad.
Every woman alive is watching it. My wife,
Yeah.
and I know my wife is probably going to watch this. My sister-in-law Tammy, my brother-in-law Daniel, they're all obsessed with Love Is Blind right
Yeah.
now, and I just
I keep trying to find like I'm trying to find my not obsessed
where's
about
the
my
point?
happiness, but I'm
What's
trying
the
to be like,
point?
how can I get in on that? And how can I have nothing to contribute to that at all.
I mean,
And
I think you do. Why not do it? Why not do a nerdy love show?
that's be funny.
Put turtle fans together, Kevin. Come
That's
on, you've
funny.
got a built-in audience.
That's funny. No, exactly right.
I
No, it's fine. And I don't know if you noticed this too, but after the cancer stuff, I don't have I lost my nerve. I don't have a thing for drama anymore. I
No, I don't
can't
either.
even fabricated drama. And there was a good period of my life where I was like Survivor, day one Survivor. So the bad Big Brother first season, I was in on their first season Apprentice. Screw it. It was a good show, right? Whatever it was. But
Well, this was we were Donald Trump fans before Donald Trump.
at the
We knew who
time,
Donald
yeah,
Trump was
because the theme song was
before.
amazing. And so
Yeah, you
and
faggot.
so if I exact and
Oh, you
but
got
then
Trump,
yeah, exactly. And then
dick.
but then one cancer later, all that stuff becomes a lot less.
I
But
mean,
yeah, and it's
I
weird. It's
still watch
not because
wrestling, but yeah.
yeah, and because I can disassociate it's funny. I actually probably enjoy wrestling more now than I did before, simply because I find it so escapist that
Mm,
it's wonderful to get lost in the narrative, right? And
yeah.
whereas now, like anything about, there's a day where I would have loved these, you know, the Night Stalker serial killer stuff and all, and I just can't do it, dude. I like it's and so I wasn't sure if you had that same reaction, but
No, I
I
do.
feel like after you fill up, and I know you've had a lot of people in your life who've been affected by cancer as well, and so it feels
Haven't
like
we all though?
once you bring in that much real drama in your life, to me,
Yeah.
logically, and I get the escape for it, but I just can't search it out. It's like
I
I
mean,
just I
on
can't.
top of that, Karen Reed is right there.
Mm,
The
mhm.
whole Karen Reed story is in my town. At
Right,
the
so
at
that's
the yeah, it's
inundated. Yeah,
literally right in my it's a mile and a half from my house where everything happened.
yeah, yeah.
So where John O'Keefe lives, literally, you come out my street, you take a left, you take another left, you go around you go around a roundabout, rotaries as we
Mhm.
call them here, and bang, it's right there. It's
Yeah.
literally right there. So like I'm in the middle of all that nonsensical drama. So like, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love what's going on with WWE right now. CM Punk, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns is one of the most interesting, deep storylines I've seen in quite some time. The Bloodline storyline was fun. But you're right. I mean, the most drama I want to see is I want to see a recreation of something that I read as a kid, like Daredevil Born Again, and how they mix in other characters and
Yeah.
storylines and arcs, or like I want to, I have my comfort shows. I'm not gonna lie, The Office is on here a lot.
Yeah.
I
I
rarely
find
turn on
myself
cable.
I end up going there a lot, and it's a shame because I know Born Again is gonna be great, but
Oh yeah.
somehow rewatching that old episode of Always Sunny is just, I know where it's
hmm
going.
hmm
I no one's gonna surprise me with a dead child or something like that that's
No,
gonna, like,
you're not
and I
gonna
know,
be that surprised,
yeah,
but
like, I know Adolescence is great on Netflix. Can't watch
hmm
it.
yeah, I've
Scares the
heard.
shit out of
I've
it,
heard.
just like, but I know it's gonna be great, but it's like, and it's weird. I don't know. So for some reason, I just,
Yeah. I mean,
mm,
I tend to watch when football's on. I fun side story. You want to talk about drama? I had to quit Facebook because of the amount of drama that
yeah,
this
I
past
buy
Super
that.
Bowl,
Yeah.
literally with everything being. I've been a Chiefs fan my whole life, living in New England, and listening to people talk about the refs and this and everything being rigged. I was like, I'll tell you, my mental health has gotten better since I got off Facebook. But man,
I'm sure. I'm
just
sure.
listening to that within your own circle and having to cut people out because they can't separate friendship from football is just it's
Yeah.
disgusting. And people here are very, very protective of Tom Brady. I get it. I'm as a Celtics fan, I'm very, very protective of Larry Bird. And I think the NBA is terrible now compared to what it was 25, 30 years ago when Bird and Magic were playing, or when Michael Jordan was playing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think LeBron's good. I think nepotism is running the league now because he got his kid a job. Viewership and attendance is down. They're having to give away free food and free beer. But you know what? Here's the one standing thing. When you see that kid walking down Hollywood Boulevard, what kind of sneakers is he wearing? He's wearing Jordans, right?
Yeah.
It's not wearing LeBron's.
No, yeah.
Tells you everything about a bygone era that you need to know. But I'm with you.
Well,
I
that's what
can't sit there.
my 15-year-old just wants his Jordans. Like that's all he wants. It's
Give
nobody's wanting brownies.
give me my Adidas Everydays or my Hokas,
Mhm.
or when I'm sitting at home, give me my stinky sweaty Crocs. But yeah, the point is that people still have nostalgia for a bygone era, and that ties into what we're saying. Going back and watching that one episode of Sunny, or for me, going back and watching the beef squatch episode of Bob's Burgers. this is me now. This is me now. Or sitting down and for the millionth time watching On Leather Wings or Christmas with the Joker
Mhm.
or or Heart of Ice,
Yeah.
like speaking Paul Dini,
Yeah.
just going back and really like romanticizing those things that maybe I didn't understand as a kid, but I understand now. Again, you really need to watch X-Men 97 because I almost just spoiled something big in that damn show. But like even Turtles going back and watching that first time we saw Raph emerged from the streets 35 years ago and
Mhm.
Casey Jones running away and him being like, you get back here, I'm not done with you, and then he just screams damn and you hear it all throughout Manhattan, or and to tie into yours, seeing seeing your version of Raph as the Night Warrior or the Night Stalker. I forget exactly what he was called. My brain is
Night
going
Watcher.
sideways. Night
Yeah, and
Watcher, thank you.
they're coming out with a it's an 8-part series, I think, and so they're coming
It's a
out in
comic book,
August.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and they're coming out with a trade, collected trade, in August, I believe, so I wrote a
Are you at
forward
least
for
writing
that.
a forward for it?
Yep, yep,
Oh, good. Well,
yeah.
I'm gonna need a signed copy then. I
It's
really
really
do.
cool.
That's awesome.
It's so bizarre, man. It's so bizarre to, like, just do something that was just like a narrative tool as we were writing, and then all of a sudden it becomes canon. I know all those guys are used to it, but it's uh it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun, at
Yeah,
least the way I like
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
And you mentioned this in a text thread the other day where everything under the blue sun always comes up. We just have these very intricate random conversations via text, which is
Yeah.
always great. But yeah, how did that come about? Night Watcher becoming a thing in the comic books, now being canon. Congratulations, may I add.
No, I know, and it's been in I forget what series it was. They referenced him in the 2012 show. I think it was that they
They
referenced.
did. They did. Yeah, he's in the 2012 show. There's
Yeah,
a
so
figure
he's
too.
there. And so yeah, and it's just IDW and they just did it, but then now it's like the storyline is that it's basically the suit. So it's kind of like it's the best of that kind of Batman take, I think, in that it's just whoever embodies the suit becomes the hero kind of thing. So it's but it's really fun. It's really fun. So
You know, I went back and watched the movie last night just for shits and giggles. I fell asleep on the couch,
yeah.
unfortunately, so I didn't really get as far into it as I
Mhm.
wanted to. But Night Watcher always felt very Batman. It
Yeah,
felt
yeah,
like I can see where you took
100%.
from Batman with him, and I love him. I know everybody always thought he looked like a teddy bear, but let's take a minute and talk about your TMNT. How this and I always loved the story. I loved it last time. I'll
Yeah.
love it this time again. Listen, my friends, I want to be very clear about this. As a turtle fan, one thing I have always accepted within Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is different points of view, different perspectives, different characters, and the Shredder does not need to be at the forefront of everything. Yes, he is our Thanos in the Turtleverse. I get that. But we all loved Mutant Mayhem, and Shredder wasn't in Mutant Mayhem.
Yeah.
You have no and I think we actually recorded right before Mutant Mayhem came out, didn't we? Last time?
Yeah, we might have, yeah, when I think about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and now we know it was Cynthia Utom, and the Utoms were the main villain of the first movie, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And man, it was a fun take. It really was.
Yeah, that was
There's
fantastic.
there's not a version of Turtles I mean, I haven't watched all of Rise. I haven't watched all of 2012. I need to. I need to sit down and find some time to watch them. I own them.
Yeah.
I've been watching the new one that's on Paramount Plus. I need to go
Yeah.
back and finish it. I really like what they did with Bishop. Bishop's a cool character. But, this is one of those times where and this goes back to X-Men 97 here for a minute, where everybody was mad that Morph was non-binary and all these things that we already knew about X-Men that people just made shitty videos to complain about. Shout out Steve
Mhm.
Archer again for that video. But let's get into this because your take on Turtles was fun. Cowabunga Carl, every time I walk into my friend's shop and see that van, I smile. And I
Yeah,
I
right.
I,
That's
I
fun.
must tell that story 1,000 times. I'm eventually gonna buy it. The things It's one of the most valuable turtle vehicles, actually.
Is it
You
really?
should be proud of that. The thing's like complete. It's like a $400 piece. On card, it's almost 1,000. At least last time I checked.
Wow.
So,
I gotta take pictures of all the toys I got here and send them to you. See what
oh,
you think.
I
About you.
know. I'm speaking of things, I'm still waiting to put a sketch from you in my case next to Eastman and Laird.
I gotta do that. Yes, I do. I will.
Eventually.
I will. I
when
promise.
you when you have 5 minutes to just sketch a turtle. But let's talk about turtles. How did this, and for those people who didn't watch the original episode in 2023, let's talk about this because you worked on this alongside Laird and Eastman. And this was at a time when Peter and Kevin really weren't talking either.
Yeah, no,
This
actually
was a
it
difficult
was
time.
right after that actually, because Kevin wasn't involved in this. This was just Peter. It was Peter and then Gary at Mirage. They were
And
basically in charge of the franchise.
quite possibly one of the greatest voice casts you could ever
Yeah,
put together.
it's
Kevin
pretty
Smith
great.
is in there. Lawrence Fishburne. y- Jesus, Sarah Michelle Gellar. You have Mako. You have Patrick Stewart. Nolan North.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably missing a few. I'm missing James
There's
Arnold
a
Taylor, aren't I?
there's
Yeah.
a ton. Yeah. And just
John
when you look at
DiMaggio.
like it is a who's who of the voice community. It's pretty cool.
Oh, it's probably one of the best casts in history. How did you fall into what many of us, especially those of us from New England, think is next to the Tick, the greatest property of all time, man? Like
Yeah,
one of
no,
the
no.
best.
With Turtles, it was I was working a lot in LA for like the 2 years leading up to that. I was doing like a bunch of pilots, which is like you would just go in and do an animatic basically. And if at anything they would test the animatic, and then if you got picked, you got to move on and actually animate it. And so I made a living by getting a whole bunch of pilots made that never went anywhere, and started doing more writing. And then I met this company, Emoji, that they were doing this other movie that was all about a cat who thinks he's a dog. Basically, it was a real sort of family fare kind of thing. It's called Cattail, and then I heard rumors that they were trying to go after the Turtles license, and I kept hearing it, and so then I kind of kept on talking to Galen Walker, the producer there, and just kind of being persistent, I guess. And then eventually just kind of kept pitching ideas for scenes and little moments and stuff. And so eventually they said, okay, cool. Do you want to fly to Northampton and meet Peter and talk to him about potentially directing it, because they had been meeting with other directors. So, and that was it. And so I went there. We spent a whole day just hanging around Northampton talking to Peter and Gary, really great guy, and we just kind of just talked about everything except the movie, and that was it. And I brought my Turtles #1 comic just in case I didn't get the job. I thought I'd at least get it signed, and so I brought it out, and he signed it. It was like a third printing of it. So it's like
The
it's super
third
beat up.
printing is very. I had a third printing. My
There- I actually have it right here. I don't have it.
oh oh, open it up,
Yeah.
open it up.
And so then
Show
on
'em my favorite part.
and then on the inside, you can't.
Oh.
There's no way you can see it. But
No,
anyway,
you can see that.
and
You
then
can
so
see
on
that.
the way home to the airport, I
Wait a
opened
minute,
it
wait a
up.
minute. I need to hold that up again. I just so I can throw this on my
There you
Instagram
go.
later. Tell them what they're missing. That is so good.
Yeah, and so we kind of parted ways, and we were driving back to the airport in the rental car, and didn't really know how it went. And then I took out the comic to take a look and see what the signature, and it said, "Dear Kevin, make a good movie or else," and it was a picture of Raphael. And then Pete signed it, and that's how I found out. And so I got to get that signed. That's the only reason why it's there. Not signed. I got to get it framed
You know,
for the office.
for those of us who have had the pleasure of meeting Peter Laird, he is a peaceful, quiet man, a wonderful man.
Yes.
He is so sweet. I happen to know Steve Levine, who was their color artist, and I talk to Steve all the time. I've been trying to get Steve to just come do an episode with me, and to kind of bring Michael Dooney and Jim Lawson with them,
That'd be
because
fun.
Eric
Those two
Talbot
guys.
too. They're all New
Yeah.
England guys. They
Oh yeah,
all
and
live
Eric
here.
too. Yeah.
You have to remember there are two franchises that live in our heads rent free here, and that's Ninja Turtles and the Tick. And the Tick was created 2 towns over from me. Ben Ulrich, yeah,
Yeah,
he
Ben
lives two
Ben
towns over
Edlund,
from
yeah.
me. Worked in the New England comics across from the Planet Fitness in Brockton, it's still where it was. Like, you can go into that New England Comics and you can buy Tick merchandise. My good friend Ian Chase Nichols, no relation, actually works on that book. And, like, those are two franchises we hold in such high regard here. I have and this is a new one
That's
for
fun.
you. I did a whole run on the Tick for figures when we had Townsend Coleman on,
Oh yeah,
and I brought out a giant tick during that episode,
that's
and
fun.
then I got to meet him, and I met the boys. They're right behind me. No, they're not. I moved. Where did I move them? Oh, they're over there now. Well, they used to be right here,
Okay.
and I met the boys. I met Cam. I met Rob. I met Barry and him and Renee Jacobs. Renee did my show too, and we just talked in length about that and how when they first met Kevin and Peter, very similar, stories. And you always hear the story about Kevin's tank.
Yeah, right. Yeah, when we were because at Pete's place too, like he had like a barn in the bottom level, has a bunch of cars, and there's like a first generation Hummer, and it had like the number 4 on it or something. It was like what, like the fourth one off the assembly line or whatever it was. And I think he and Kevin got matching ones, I think, from what I remember. There's a ton of stories, but yeah.
Yeah, but so probably to this day and to many 80s kids, obviously there's some merch behind me. My NECA case is right here,
Yeah.
as you can see. Um, it's a storied franchise, and I think it's one of those things that we as 80s kids and even 70s kids, those who grew up with the original 1500 print run of TMNT 1, the story. 1500 made it off the line, the rest got destroyed, so they had to go to a second and a third print because the printer accidentally destroyed them. It's one of those things where you want to go back and talk about it, and it's a storied franchise. And I know I said we weren't going to get into too much interview shit here, but the more we've been diving deeper here and the longer we go, it's like, you kind of have to talk about Ninja Turtles
There's
to kind of
so many
end
stories.
out the show and spend
Yeah.
5-10 minutes talking about it and kind of just be within that moment, because we talk about it all. We just talk about it in passing because it's Turtles and it's something we both
Yeah.
love. But also, that your IMD and Rotten Tomatoes ratings have gone significantly higher. When last time I interviewed you, we were at
No.
like a 3. The movie is now at a 6.2.
Oh, really? No way. Oh, that's funny.
People are fine. And I told you, people are
No, man,
finally seeing it.
it's really funny because I think like when it came out, we were in Hong Kong for the Hong Kong premiere. We were with all the crew, and it opened up in the morning, and they track it like from New York over to California, and so each time zone theaters would check in. This was way back when theater was king. And in the morning, it started on Friday morning, and they were like, oh, it's starting off pretty well. It might be a third place, maybe it might be two, but probably it's going to be 3. And then what was happening, and then we thought, okay, cool, whatever. So we went in, because that would have been Friday night, and then we came out of the screening that night, and we were back at the hotel, and they said, oh, by the way, what happened was that when work let out on the East Coast at 5 o'clock, all of a sudden all the attendance started to spike, because it was
Yeah.
everybody who grew up on Turtles who were going after work. And so then there was a whole bunch of people then that basically then they shot from 3 to by the end of that night. They said this could be the first place movie. And then it eventually beat, I think it was 300 on its like 4th week. So that wasn't a big deal. But
No,
it showed that
300 was huge, man. It's
it
Frank
was at
Miller
the
right
time, but
there.
yeah, it was on its way out. So it's I know it wasn't a big David and Goliath, but still it was uh shit, what was I gonna say? We were talking about
That opening
the
weekend.
the opening weekend, yeah, and then it coming out. Oh yeah. So and then at the time, so what made it that weekend, I think, was this fan base. I think because that's kind of what we made it for. We weren't trying to make it be like a super kiddie kind of friendly, what Nickelodeon would have done nowadays kind of thing. It started out trying to be a comic book movie, at
That
least.
was a year before the Nickelodeon buyout too.
It was, yeah, a couple of years before. Yeah, it was, yeah.
I
And
thought Nickelodeon bought out in '08.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because I guess the movie came out in 2000, early 2007.
07.
So
Yeah.
was it 08? Well, that's crazy. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so and And so what's funny though now is that everybody who's reaching out now to me on like anything on socials or anything like that is it's everybody who was a kid back then. And so at the time back then, the only real sounding board was the fan base. And then now it's a whole group of people who like, dude, that was my turtles, which is like crazy. Like, but you're like, that's their first foray into the world of
Yeah,
turtles was that
yeah.
version of it, which is like that's and I know everybody does it who works in franchises and stuff, but that's a trip. That's really cool. And so yeah, so as a result, it's crazy. It's kind of gets it's there's a lot of just sort of interest and love for it, which is super cool. So,
Well, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a franchise to this day, and it's funny. I talk to my business partners, Joe and Arif, about this all the time. That we're all still obsessed with. I know he's gonna watch this too. I got to give a shout out to my good friend Doug, who was out in Utah. He found me the new Shredder figure. Like, look at this.
oh,
This figure is coming. This show is coming up on 40 years old, and this is
yeah.
like the sixth iteration of this figure I've bought. And he comes with a fucking chef's hat and everything. He comes with the shredder bucks from the show and stuff like that. And that should tell you something. Like, this is a storied franchise. Then you go and look, and Joe is backstage producing this episode today, and trust me, when we get off camera, he'll tell you the same thing. We walk into the Emporium of Retro and Interesting Collectibles over in Southeast, a couple towns over. We toy hunt there a lot.
Yeah.
We buy a lot of our stuff there. A lot of my rare turtle pieces have come from there, but he has two things in that shop that I want more than anything, and that's that Cowabunga Carl van, which is sitting in the part of his shop called Parts Unknown, and he has an original scratch from Playmates. And I'm waiting for the day where
That's
he goes,
cool.
Billy, just shut the fuck up and take the stupid thing, and make sure that Kevin signs it, because I talk about it all the time. Like,
That's fine.
we talk turtles a lot, and
That's fine.
so as we know, a lot of people really weren't on board with this movie at first, but you took a massive leap not putting, and I
Mhm.
grabbed Shredder for a reason, and then I put him down. This is the Thanos of the Turtleverse, as we know.
Mhm.
Um, if we're being realistic and you really want to be a deep diving comic book fan, yeah, Shredder was the guy. We know that Orokusaki was everything. The Utoms weren't even trying to do anything. They were a peaceful race, and then who were battling Triceratons in the original comic books. And somehow ended up bringing the turtles to another dimension, which was quite fun,
Yeah.
if you read those original turtle episodes. But I liked that we just passed the 18-year anniversary of your movie a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
the 23rd of March. We're gonna and I'm leading somewhere because we talked about it last time and we never really got deep into it. But we talked about why people didn't like this movie, and there was a setup in there for Shredder for into the next movie, because you
Yeah.
could see it towards the end. Um, talk about, oh man, what's his name now? Can't remember your main villain. I'm
Winters?
Yes, Winters.
Yeah.
Talk about Winters for a second here. I was thinking
Yeah.
Summers, and I
Yeah.
couldn't get it off the top of my head, and I started scrolling down IMDb.
Yeah.
I told you guys I really don't have a script tonight. All I have is Kevin's IMDb and Instagram on this screen, and that's it.
Yeah.
Just so that way, if I needed a quick reference point, it was there. But again, a killer, absolute killer voice cast. Fucking Captain America's in this movie as Casey Jones, people. But talk about Winters for a minute here, because he was a badass, and he was obsessed with
No.
history,
Yeah.
and his gallery was just very, he felt very Wilson Fisk.
Yeah, it's like that sort of Dorian Gray kind of
Yeah.
it's yeah, it was really cool, and it was and you can't gripe because it's the way it is, but in the original draft of it, it was more hinted at, and that he was this guy who liked antiquities, and you got deeper into his world, and then you went around, and you saw, oh my God, that Roman gladiator looks an awful lot like that, and then you would sort of start piecing things together, and then eventually realize that he's lived enough lives and he wants to move on. So there's something, I don't know, yeah, so that was it was like a really fun, I like the idea of something being really I don't know. It just I like as a drive for a character to me, this idea, and I love the tension that would come up that just because he's had enough of it and now he's brought back these brothers, right, of his, and he's like, okay, cool, now we're gonna check out because it really sucks here. And they're like, what the hell, dude? We just got here.
Yeah.
And so then that I always like that and that sort of as a premise for it. And so yeah, it was cool.
It felt very it had a very takeover vibe, like new to equate it to wrestling here, like the New World Order. You know, Hogan came in,
Mhm.
three simple words, we're taking over, and that was fun.
Yeah.
And you know, you gave a moral compass to four brothers who were struggling with it through in that within that movie, trying to find their way. And
Mhm.
again, Cowabunga Carl, let's be realistic here. Michelangelo working a job.
Well, I mean, and they're all extensions of that. Like it was the funny thing about that one is that I had to I was still like I'd written for a good few years before that, but I'd never really gotten to this point where you sort of empathetically try to write characters from it's the reason why like an actor can never talk about their character like they're the villain, because a real villain would never think they're the villain if they've got, any reality to it. And so you have to sort of get into the skin of everybody. But the problem is that I had sort of overpromised on this script, and there was like 150 people waiting to get to work, and we needed a script like yesterday. And so I needed a brain hack for how to like get these characters talking to each other. And so I really started to sort of embody like what would this guy say to this guy in this situation. So as a result, I knew where I wanted it to go with Pete, where we wanted sort of the character arcs to go and like we wanted them to listen. But then as a result, to do that, you would end up coming up with these things like Cowabunga Carl or even Night Watcher. They're all extensions of whatever their character or moral crisis is going through at the
But yeah,
moment, right?
man,
Like,
Night
and
Watcher's
so yeah,
awesome. And
so as
that
long as
fight
you have that
scene.
connection, then it makes sense for the audience because it doesn't feel like it's tagged on just as like some
No,
cool
but
outfit or
the
something.
the
So
the Night Watchers, the fight scene with Night Watcher and Leo is
it's classic.
it's
It's classic.
iconic. And
He's in,
we talked about it earlier in the show. Night Watcher's getting his own graphic novel now.
it's
And
crazy, man. Yeah.
I'm stoked about that, man. Like it's cool to see that it's canonical and people are starting to understand what was there, but
Yeah.
there's some pieces to this that haven't been said, and you've spoken to this in length. That if I remember correctly, Harvey Weinstein blew this whole movie up.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a crazy ride. It was a lot of politics. It was a lot of uh we we went in, and the deal was really simple at the beginning because they bought it based off of just the teaser trailer, and they were just like, listen, as long as you follow the script. We had a lock script that I had written, and Pete had completely signed off on, as long as it looks as good as the trailer and as long as it's under 90 minutes, you guys have director's cut in theory. So we went in for a year and we kind of worked with that assumption, and then we showed these two major studio heads the film a year later, and then everything kind of went sideways from there. And so then that was sort of like they kind of I think, and what I do think, and it's not because I think people are inherently evil and they want to screw movies over, is that I think it showed a lot of promise already for what it could be, because it just looked and felt different, especially for like Warner Brothers to be looking at something like that when everything else they have done didn't look like that. But it was very much in the same spirit as, whatever. And then and Harvey saw money, and so I'm sure. And so as a result, that's when all the cooks come in. And then when you have something this big, it's a lot of cooks. It's a lot of high power cooks.
I mean, in the words of Jay Muse, this was Warner Brothers and Miramax, wasn't it? If I'm not mistaken, I almost kind of wanted
It
to.
was Weinstein Company, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I thought the Weinsteins made classy films like Rain Man and The Crying Game. I know you know the reference, so
Yes.
but
Yeah.
to put a cap on Turtles here, because I told you I didn't want to spend too much on this if we talked about it.
Yeah.
There is a director's cut out there that has never been seen. Am I correct?
It's somewhere. I don't actually know it. I thought I had one, and then I don't think I do. I'm pretty sure I know the couple of people who would have it. But yeah, it would be it's at the end of like the final movie is the director's cut, because you're the
Yeah,
director,
but
and that's that
that
goes.
one that
But there's
didn't.
two definite cuts. There's the end cut that's in the theater, and then there was the cut before this well and the cut that's before is actually there's no mystery to it. It's actually it's the PDF, the script of the movie that's I think online that's out there. It opens on the jungle. It doesn't open
Mhm.
with the flashback, all that kind of stuff. And it
I
was
I
mostly a reorder.
have that script because of you.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
I want to
And
see
that's
this
it.
still.
I would yeah,
And
there's got to be a version of it out there. So
well, listen, we are figuratively less than 2 years away from the 20th anniversary. We
yeah.
should probably long-term story tell that. Wait, hold on.
Mhm.
Let's look ahead for a minute here because this gives me a stupid idea, and I like my stupid ideas. And Joe, I know you're watching backstage. Forgive my stupid ideas, but March 23rd is a Tuesday, so figuratively we'd have to do it on a Friday. But this gives me an idea for down the road. Maybe do like a fundraiser for the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. Sell digital tickets. $5 donation gets you in the door for a Q&A
Yeah,
and
it'd be crazy if
possible
we could.
viewing. That would be
That'd be fun, right?
wild, man. That would
Yeah.
I would love to. I would love to
Yeah.
show people that, and I mean see it myself. But a lot of people have said it's a great return to CGI. I loved Patrick Stewart being a part of the Turtleverse. I love him as everybody loves him as Captain Kirk. I love him as Avery Bullock in American Dad. That's me.
I know.
But
I know.
I also loved him in this movie. Smith, come in, we're doing cocaine and shooting guns. That's my Patrick Stewart. But you know it's good to see that that's out there. And if you're watching this in 2027, it's probably happening. So just go to plasticwaxanddonuts.com. Keep an eye out. Tickets will be available via the Eventbrite. I'll make a Reefer Joe do that for me because I'm just too fucking lazy. So let's get to something fun here to finish this out. Now, I know we've talked about collecting, and you, like me, in a very different aspect, collect. Now, what do you collect?
To be honest with you, dude, I don't collect actively. I'm trying to think if there's anything good.
You don't have to be active to be a collector.
No,
A
I mean,
collection of shit is being a collector, sir.
yeah, no, I mean, guitars are probably my thing, and not because I have like a massive amount of like Les Pauls and stuff like that. Like I love shitty beater guitars with character, and I seem to get like a new instrument for every project I do. I usually end up getting some sort of like instrument, like a
So you
ukulele
just
or a
walk into a pawn shop, grab a guitar while you're there.
yeah, and a lot of times too, like when we're up in Montreal, is that I'll go to like a pawn shop and I'll find a used one if they don't have a good sale someplace, and just to kind of because I love having a guitar like in editorial and stuff, just to sort of like it's fun to have like a sofa guitar because everybody kind of picks it up and messes with it. And there was one I had one with Ratchet and Clank where everybody who came in signed it, so there was actually like there's the whole thing was like all like autographed by the entire like Ratchet crew. So that's somewhere up at Rainmaker up in Vancouver, I think. But yeah,
All right.
that's my
So
jam.
best
It's a
guitar
conversation killer, I know. Sorry.
no, best guitar you this is not a conversation killer by any means. Listen, I could go on my desk and tell you about something stupid that I found just in my travels, and that's this. And it just sits on my desk. This is my stress ball during the day. This
Nice.
is a 1987 McDonald's Transforming Big Mac. And it just, when I'm stressed out working on something or like a project or something like that,
Yeah.
he's right there.
Hey.
So yeah, collecting isn't necessarily whatever it is, but there's got to be to wrap this up and put a boot on the car. There has to
Yes.
be a good guitar story to finish out this episode, and then we'll let people know where to find you and everything like that.
It's a good guitar story. Um
Come on, man. There has to be just some dungy guitar that you found. Like you're in the middle of nowhere. You're in Istanbul, Turkey, and you walked into a shop and Raki Shagar's guitar was there or something like that. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something random off the top of my head.
uh my wife and I here in Ventura are fans of there's a local tiki bar called Vintiki, which is amazing, and they have and I don't actually go there as much anymore now post cancer, which is a whole other thing. We'll talk about that another
We're
whole
we're
thing.
we are pretty homeward bound.
I'm a lightweight now, but back when I wasn't, we why did he get colon cancer? And so I'm
Too
just
much
playing
booze. Too
a
much
day
booze.
of Mai Tais and daiquiris. So we did this, and then as we were walking back, we were trying to make our way over to a pub, and we passed a brand new guitar shop that had just opened, and we went in, and we ended up buying their very first guitar that they had sold, and they had just opened that day, and it was basically I can't remember the brand of it, but it's one of those steel ones, like with all the cutouts on the front and stuff. And so they didn't have a case for it. We still wanted to go get a beer, and I also found an acoustic bass at the time that I really liked as well. So we bought that, and so the two of us were walking into the pub at the same time that the actual band was coming in to play, but we were just going in there to sort of at the bar and rest our instruments against the side. But we almost had to throw down with the band. They immediately got defensive, as if they were double booked, and we're like, no, these will not be
We're
played
not
this evening.
booked.
I know, but
So,
and if there would have been a third act to that, it would have been great. And at 11:30, we were on stage jamming, but there's no startling.
how did this come about? No,
No,
no, seriously, how did this come about?
no, there's no ending to that. It just fizzles out as a drunk story, and that's about it. But
So
that
you
was a
just
really good pressure. That was a good
got up on a
purchase.
guitar. You just got up on stage. You
No,
you you, you
no,
channeled Dennis Stamp and yelled, "I'm not booked." Just started jamming. Some of you are going to know what that means. Some of you have seen 1996's Beyond the Mat and know who Dennis Stamp is. But that's knowing you the way I know you. That's the most you story I've ever heard. I think up on stage, shit faced, just playing guitar at 11:30 at night on what I can only assume is a random Thursday.
yeah, exactly. Aren't they all Fridays?
Every day's a Friday when you're drunk. I know that. But all right, let's put a pin on this one for this first episode. Kevin will be
Okay,
back, I'm sure. He's like Avengers Endgame. He's inevitable, man. He will always be in the mix of anything and everything we do. Kevin, where can they find you on
always.
social?
I Instagram, and I should be getting more active now because I actually have a life after a movie production. So it's at Kev Munroe, and yeah, and you can see a whole bunch of those cancer rocks that I was painting back in the day whenever we were going through
Very cool.
treatment. And I'm just right now in the middle of writing a book about everything that happened, and gonna figure out how to publish it. So it's
Hey,
been
man.
very fun, and
Amazon has ways. Everybody
that's what I'm
publishes through
saying.
Amazon.
I just remember, like, and you know what it's like too, when it happened, all you do is just doom search all the time. And so anytime that I could find something that felt like it matched with what I wanted, how I wanted to hear the information, right? And so to me, I'm like, even if it's 0.02% of people who go like, oh, cool, I read that, and it kind of like it helped me wrap my head
Hit you
around.
right there, yeah.
Yeah,
And
so I don't know.
let's not end on too much of a downer note, but those are three words I don't want any of you to hear. I think, you know, both of us can tell you this, the best thing you can do is not doom scroll in that situation. Do not drown
Yeah,
yourself in something. Kevin painted some wonderful rocks. I spent $12,000 on Hasbro figures, WWF
nice.
Hasbro.
We all cope
Yeah.
in our own ways.
Yeah, you learn how to cope in your own way and do it correctly. But that is Just Press Records Sessions episode 1. Guys, this is going to be a more regular thing. Is there somebody you want to see on this show? Is there somebody you want me to talk to? My social media handle is right there. I pointed at it on the first chance. I'm only on Instagram and here on YouTube. I'm at Billy Nichols Brand. Get in my DMs if there's somebody interesting you want me to talk to. I don't care if I know them or not, as long as they have a good story to tell. Let's do this. This show is not about bringing on celebrities. This show is not about bringing on people who've worked on famous productions. Obviously, we have some friends who've worked on some interesting productions and we're going to bring them on, but this is about hearing people's stories, talking about random shit, and just throwing inhibition to the wind and just pressing record. Guys, my name is Billy Nichols. If you're watching this, thanks so much for getting this far in the video. That's my good buddy Kevin Munroe. He's on the right. I'm on the left. I can't point because everything's backwards on camera. But in the meantime, do me a favor, keep calm, collect on, watch everything on Plastic Wax and Donuts, and for crying out loud, go into your local donut shop and grab a raspberry glazed, will you? We'll see you in the next one. Take care.